Hello and welcome to the 49th edition of New Directors, New Films, presented by Film at Lincoln Center and the Museum of Modern Art. My name is Tyler Wilson. I'm an assistant programmer from Film at Lincoln Center, and it's my pleasure today to welcome you to this discussion of Nafi's Father, written and directed by Mamadou Dia. This film premiered a little over a year ago at this point at the 2019 Locarno Film Festival, where it was awarded not one, but two Golden Leopards, including Best First Feature. I think it's still enjoying a life on the festival circuit, and we're thrilled to finally present the film to our audience in New York and elsewhere in the States. So I'd like to say first, thank you for your patience, Mamadou, and of course for joining us today for this discussion. Before we get to the film itself, how are you? Maybe you can tell us where you are and what you've been up to.
I'm good. Thank you so much, Tyler, and thank you for the New Directors, New Films 2020 edition. And I'm happy that the festival finally happened, even though we wished that it was in the actual theaters where people can go and see the movies. And New York City being kind of my home in the US, because that's where I did my MFA. And that I know many people, I have friends and kind of family members and close friends, and I would have loved to share this experience with them. And now it has to be online. It's still a great thing that you finally decided to make this festival happen, and I thank you for that. And now I'm in Senegal, in Dakar, Senegal. I'm Senegalese from Senegal, so I decided to come back. I'm kind of trying to work in several projects now, my project, my business partners, and trying to get off some kind of work in here and working with some initiatives and groups in Dakar that also all around filmmaking and getting African voices more and more out.
Yeah, it is a bit bittersweet to screen online since, as you said, I think a number of your key crew members are from New York, and you met maybe when you were in school here?
Yes, so I met my director of photography, Sheldon Chow. He was 3 or 4 years ahead. I met also my editor, Alan Wu, who edited the film. We were in the same class, actually. I met also through NYU, my business partner, who's also Senegalese. He was working a lot with NYU students at that time as a color grader. And that's how I met him. They said, "Oh, do you know this guy? There is a Senegalese guy who comes here and helps us collaborating out." And I say, "Who is he? I don't know." And then that's how he started. And he's also an actor, so he acted also in my first short film in New York City that I shot in Harlem at the time. And that's how that we came together. We created this company called the Joy Didi. That's the company that is behind the film, actually. And that's the company also that did the distribution, because we don't have a distribution sector that is very lively in Senegal. So that's how also we toured, him and I, with our inflatable projector and screen and tour around Senegal to show the movie. His name is Mababa, and it's really because of him that we've been able to make this film.
That's amazing. So I presume you screened the film in Matam?
Yes, so we decided that the national premiere in Senegal has to be in Matam. Generally, I mean, Dakar is the main city, has almost 30% of our population. That's where everyone is. But we say this film was made by Matam people because really, besides 2 actors, everybody else in the cast is from Matam, all of them. Besides Alassane Sy, the main actor, and the woman who played his wife, everyone else is from Matam. So, and many of them, 98% of them, have never seen a film crew before. So it's like doing a workshop, talking to them, getting them understand how filmmaking works, and having the community work with us. And also, I think that helps a lot. Maba always, and when we talk about writing as producers. When I'm writing this, I know Matam, I know my city. I know which mosque is going to allow me to film. So I'm going to write for that mosque. Which house could be used as the house of a rich guy? I know which hotel in this area has a swimming pool, which can be used for the mayor's house. So I think that helped a lot. So Matam was the first place we did for the premiere. And we did 2 nights in a row because one night wasn't enough. So people wanted to see the movie again. And it was amazing. It was a great experience for Maba and I, seeing people laughing and seeing themselves on the screen, because many of them have never seen a screen that big because in Senegal we don't have theaters in the small towns, even though we used to. Now they just don't exist. So it was a great experience, and we were happy to share the film with them first.
That sounds incredible. I'm curious to hear more about your writing process and how that related to your casting, and also setting the film in Matam. But maybe I thought maybe to set the stage a little bit, it would maybe make sense to start with the inspiration behind the film, because one of the first things that struck out to me when I was watching it is how well you balance a number of story threads in such a precise but absolutely connected way. At first it just seems to be a relationship drama between a father's daughter and his brother, but it does gradually open up into something much bigger, into this kind of cautionary tale about how extremism can sort of infiltrate or sort of sneak into a community without you even realizing it. And I think it's a theme as relevant as ever, unfortunately, that could be told in many different parts of the world these days, but I think you do so here with such rich detail. So maybe you can take us back to the time, the place, the sort of the state of mind you were in when the story first took shape.
Yeah, so it's a very great question, because I think it started for me realizing who I was, because I've always lived in Senegal. Even though I worked in journalism for over 10 years, I traveled around mostly the African continent, but I never stayed outside of Senegal, let's say more than 2 weeks. It was always short trips, going to cover an election or going to something like that, or there is something happening in another place. And then when I moved to the US studying my master's, every time I have to tell people that, I'm a Muslim. My dad used to be an imam. My grandfather also used to be an imam. And I think the reactions weren't the one I expected. And then I started explaining myself. And there is a point that when you realize that, why do you have to explain yourself all the time? This is wrong, that I have to explain myself, that in sub-Saharan Africa, Islam is not the way it is portrayed in media. In sub-Saharan Africa, Christianity is not the way it's portrayed in some media. People work together, live together. In Senegal, there are many families where two siblings are from different religions, and it's common in so many countries, but we don't talk about those. And the second thing is the Donald Trump election in 2016, and I realized how the shock was big in New York. And I started questioning, how did it happen? How do people vote for this kind of people? How, like in a democracy, people willingly decide to put someone in power that is a disaster? So I started weaving in this personal story with a bigger political issue. So I see the story with different rings. It's like the family drama first. The father and daughter relationship is the biggest one and is the strongest one for me. And this is based on my father and my sisters, the relation he used to have with them when he was alive. Very close to them, really a confident, with someone they can talk to, someone they could always share their opinions and then with. And then the second one comes the community, because I think when these kind of things happen in Senegal or in many countries where family and community are the biggest and the strongest hold, and that the family breaks, then everything goes into shadows in some ways. So the family entity is the most important for me that way. I know how my family helps me, and I know how everyone's family helps them in here, how they can be just like the thing that you can sit in every time, and then something that you can fall on if you have any issues. So having extremism, it could be political, it could be religious extremism. It's always the family that gets first dislocated in some ways. So then the family comes. So father and daughter, family, and then the community. The community could be a cultural community, could be a political community, but the community at large is going to be also changed. So this community in the film in Matam, in Yonti, this is an imaginary city, has changed forever. So the story is not to talk about what happens after extremism, but the main question is how does it happen? How do we get there? How do we see signs and ignore them? Or how do we see signs and decide they're not the right ones? Or it's not time to react, or it's not time to act. So we just sit down and wait for things to get at the point, like in the US now after election, that we don't know what to do.
Yeah, it is. It is a bit of an origin story in that way. So, in terms of your writing process, this seemed to be a pretty crucial question that was on your mind as you were actually developing your characters and finding your focus. There is the dynamic between Tierno and Nafi that's very important, but also with his brother Ousmane, but you also take really great care to sketch out the many different kinds of interpersonal relationships throughout the town, which I think is like a really beautiful aspect of the film. I think I felt like I really understood the village and the dynamics, because we do get a glimpse of the sort of social norms, but also and the religious norms, and also the sort of a glimpse into the politics. It is a very broad but also specific representation, even between the generational divides, between the elders to the children. We kind of get a glimpse at every aspect of the community, which is really wonderful. Yeah, so I'm curious if you had other questions on your mind as you were writing. You mentioned earlier that you were also sort of writing with your producer's hat in mind, since you understood the location so well, and that maybe also guided some location settings for scenes. But I'm also just wondering if any characters themselves were born from just you knowing someone in the village.
Yeah, I mean, many of those people, they always based of people I know. And I think also because doing this film is also part of how Africa is represented. I mean, for me, working in journalism for a decade, it's always felt a little limiting at some points where it has to be always extreme. Like the movies that came out of Africa, the one that are really known, are talking about child soldiers, are talking about starvation, are talking about things like that. Or you have the extreme other side that are the people that just are heroes. I mean, a kid that knows how to do something and has a gift. So where are the stories of just, let's say, normal people like you and I, who wake up in the morning and do their jobs? So for me, that is Tierno. That is someone who is a local imam in a tiny mosque, in a tiny community, in a small town in northern Senegal, who is just trying to be a father as any one of us would try to be. So for me, those stories in that set were very important to get out there. And the second thing of having so many people in there, I left my home city probably to go to college, but I never had my room for myself. It just doesn't happen in that community. People share rooms with cousins and brothers, and my hometown being the small town around that had the high school, we had the hospital, we had the police station, we had the post office. So people would come to our town. And some of them, when they go to the hospital, they have to stay. So they would stay at my home, for instance. So just this idea of just individual person's story just doesn't cross my mind, because I don't know how to do it, or I don't know that exists, because my life and my day is always impacted by so many things happening to me by other people. So those characters come to life because there are people I really know. Tierno is loosely based on my father. Ousmane are also some people that I know who come back with such knowledge and such confidence that they go over beyond whatever people expected to them. And I also cast it in that way. I cast people that I knew were close to those characters, or vice versa. The characters get reshaped the way they are. For instance, when I was writing Tierno, I was envisioning an older imam, actually. Then I met Alassane Sy in New York at the New York Film Festival, actually at Lincoln Center, where he was showing his short film. He's also a director. And then I'm like, Tierno can be young, because I know that in my northern region of Senegal, people get married generally very young, and they have kids that look like their sisters. And if you see the film from the first scene, when they're singing together, they look like siblings or friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That crossed my mind as well. I was really struck by his age. It really forms an interesting dynamic.
Of course. And it still exists that people at 18 have their daughters and son. So when they're 40, this kid is in college.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like an interesting when you see them together, they have this relationship that is father-daughter, but still also being at the same generation. So that's something I wanted to have there. So everyone else also was casted that way. I wasn't, because they're non-actors, many of them, I wasn't trying to find someone and change that person. I would find a person that says the way it is, the way he is, and adapt the character with that. So the script had a skeleton and beat points and moments that were clear, but how to get there was like a common work with actors, with also all the crew to get the people, get the scene. So no, for instance, I just give an example of dialogue. I had these dialogues and monologues that I was so happy with. And I get there, some of them don't write or read because French is the official language, but we don't speak French at our homes. We speak our native languages, which is Fula, Wolof, Sere. And so they couldn't read or write the script. And there is no way you could feed someone that many lines. So you just end up killing the lines and then just working with the people, how to get the points. And that was very interesting in that way, to know people who could play it and to have the actors also bring who they are into the film. So they don't feel that they're playing. They don't feel they are acting, but they're just being who they are in front of the camera.
Yeah. So there was quite a bit of room for like improvisation in a way.
Yes, there was a room for that. And the idea was always to get them be as comfortable as possible and explain to them what the situation was. So the whole crew worked with that. For instance, Sheldon Chow, the cinematographer, chose a camera that is not that big. So we would shoot, and the team wasn't that huge. We were maybe around 30 people, 25, 30, which is relatively small. And we would try to get everybody as ease. And even during the workshops to get to the movie, we would also introduce the camera slowly so people get used to it and know how do they play. So there were some moments when I would took the scene, and I knew pretty on, or I realized pretty on, because I worked a lot with non-actors in my short films too. Sometimes when it doesn't work for the first, second, third take, it can become very frustrating that they are trying something that is not probably the way that you would have to try to shift it. So I think it's then to the director to decide, okay, let's do it a different way. So we had many moments in that way, yeah.
Was it strange for you at all, or I'm just, I guess, generally curious of what your experience was returning to Matam as a filmmaker with a narrative feature, not necessarily, like you mentioned you were a journalist, but yeah, now you're coming here with a fiction film in mind. I'm just kind of curious what that was like.
Yeah, it is very interesting because some of the people I've worked with, they used to do what is called here théâtre. It's like you can say it as a theater, but it was mostly young kids or young people who would take a theme and just do something in open air. So we would come just and watch it. That's how I knew some of them. And then, so now when I went back, so none of them have never seen a film set, right? So I'm trying to explain what that is. So they're seeing people. So the first day was like excitement. They would come, like all the neighborhood would stand around the walls and try to watch what they're doing, what we're doing. So at the second or third day, they were bored. It was like, oh, this is nothing. So this guy is going to call action, and the other guy is going to walk from one block to the next one. He's going to yell cut. It's just not worth watching. It's not worth our day. So everybody left, so there was no one around. But then they started really helping. So if you're shooting in this side of the city, somebody is coming around with a motorbike or a car, somebody would stop him and say, hey, they're shooting in that block, so be careful not to ruin the sound. So it was very interesting in that way. So people just got involved. It was easier to get extras. It was easier to get places to shoot on. So people just knew where we're pointing the camera that we need silence. So it was very helpful in that way. So when I got back and I explained to them, so it was nice, I think. So we would meet at the cultural center every day, do some rehearsals, talk to people, and then make people aware of what we're doing. So before any shooting, go talk to the elders, go to talk to the officials in the city, tell them what we're doing and why we are here. And that is very helpful. And for that also, the Senegalese government is very organized on that, because you get what is called shooting authorization from the Ministry of Culture. And they transfer that to the local authorities in wherever city you go in. And that was very helpful in that way. So it helped us a lot. And this is a city where I was born and I grew up in. So I knew people that also knew who we are and what we were doing.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a really wonderful collaborative process through and through. I mean, did you hit any obstacles?
Yeah. Of course, you always find those, say, no, I mean, I think that one of the issues was there was one part of people who thought that when you're making a movie, you rich, or you have a lot of money. So some people would ask for money, but not many. The big majority of people were really, really, really helpful. So one of some of the issues was that, and also with also shooting in a mosque. So there was a mosque that did let us shoot one day, and the second day, because it's not run in a very, it's not like a hierarchy. It's like all the people using the mosque have almost the same level of power. Now they have voices, they could vote, for instance. So we got kicked out of a mosque for one day. So we had to find another one. So those things happened, but it was nothing that threatened our shooting of the film. So we had to readjust the film, the shooting of the film. And also just like being far away from the main city, we know we couldn't afford any big technical issue. So all the crew was very focused on that to make things smoother as we can, clean the lenses, I don't know, have the monitors ready, have electrical, something for the power, not rely on the national electric power in case there is now. So it was those things, yes.
So how long was the shooting process?
So we shot 24 days in total, but in a month. So we would have 6 days, 1 day off, 5 days, 2 days off. So that's how we did it. And we also shot in end of the year, New Year's Eve, because New Year's Eve is a huge holiday in Senegal, even in a country being 90% Muslim. That was the examples I wanted to talk about earlier. New Year's Eve is huge. So the crew has to go back to Dakar, do the New Year's Eve and come back. So we did 3 days off, which was also helpful for us because as a first-time director, I was starting to get tired, because at the end of the day, you want to watch your dailies, you want to talk to the DP, you want to know also the producing. There is some things that are not happening, and we were switching between 4 languages because these people didn't speak that one, those people. So you find yourself being a translator at the same time. So it was a lot going on. So having the 3 days off at the end of the day were really helpful because it seemed like a break between the half and the second one.
Yeah. Was it relatively easy for sort of the New York part of your crew to adjust, or were you also kind of playing translator for a lot of that as well?
Yeah, so the New York crew was mostly the DP, the director of photography, Sheldon. But Sheldon is just a badass filmmaker. He just doesn't, you cannot, he's unbreakable. He would just sit there, just be part of the conversation. Like what I like is some of his techniques would always to be learn some languages, some words in the local language, and teach the other person some words in the other one. For instance, they would find a common ground, how to call lenses. So Sheldon would learn the lenses in French, and the guy would learn the lenses in English, for instance, the second AC. Or they would do something like that. And the gaffer who didn't speak English, you just find how universal film language is. They could just talk together and find ways for whatever they need and get it happen, get ready. And for that, I think it was great. And it wasn't his first time because he also shot the previous short film in Senegal also. And he shot in Nigeria, in Ghana. So he knows a little bit the continent,
Yeah, the film is so beautifully shot. Watching the film, like at times, I was also reminded of like a Western in terms of its setting and, these common themes of revenge and sort of strangers coming to town to sort of terrorize it. I'm curious if this particular genre was consciously on your mind at any point, or maybe I was just.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting because last time I was talking about that and I was quoting this filmmaker who said how inspiration can be just digested and you're not conscious of it. Yeah. The first time I heard about the Western reference was from a journalist actually. And I was like, wait, I've never thought about it, but it's there. It's true. People are trying to get this small town. Some others are coming from, and the resources are there. They're trying to get a hold of it. But it wasn't any conscious choice at the time to make a Western. But it's just been there for a while, I guess. And now that I watch it, then I see it. Every time I see it a little bit more. And it's a great comparison, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just have one more question, and it's sort of going back to, I feel like we touched upon it throughout the discussion, but it's sort of your background in journalism, and I would love to hear a bit more of how that informs your approach to filmmaking now? I feel like it's generally common for journalists to maybe turn to documentary filmmaking. But even though your film is very much a narrative, I think your attention to detail and your understanding and ability to contextualize a place really speaks to this aspect. I guess I'm interested in hearing if you thought of this film as any kind of journalistic act in some way, or if you were just what kind of skills you were carrying as a journalist to this film.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because also this film actually started from my journalism experience, because I am sure you heard of Timbuktu in Mali that was invaded by jihadists years ago. And I visited the Timbuktu city before and after, and I've seen how people were so peaceful, how they were so nice. And I was like, how did it happen in Timbuktu? So from the journalism perspective, is always trying to get things the way they are, close to the facts, because fact and fiction become very close one to another. And I think when I'm trying to write on making the movies, I see those becoming so dangerously close. For instance, the river that is in the movie is the actual river that is the border from Senegal and Mauritania. And that's the river that gave its name to Senegal. It's the river Senegal that goes through my hometown. So, and there is a kind of threat, let's say institutionally, that the news are talking about coming from the other country, which is Mauritania. Even though there is nothing that happened, we didn't have any factual terrorist attack in Senegal, fingers crossed, but the threat is still there. So it was interesting for me at the journalist perspective to get those facts right. And to get the facts right is also shooting in a city that exists, like having a real, not design anything, but having things that exist in there. And also everything that happened through the film are based on real facts, like how do people, those so-called jihadists, come and corrupt the way of weddings and marriages? How do they get young girls to marry their followers? How do they get more followers? Because they give them everything, including wives. So all those things are helped by my experience of journalism.
Yeah, the film is very moving and gripping and very effective. So I want to thank you for making it and sharing the film with us. I'm sorry we couldn't meet in person, but I guess this is the next best thing.
Of course.
And hope more people in New York and around the States can see your film now that we have it online. So Mamadou, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, this was a teamwork. Thank for all the people that believed in it. It was a movie that was made by very little money, a lot of love, and everyone just gave the best they could, from the crew to the cast to the town to the Senegalese government that helped us do the post-production. When we got into Locarno, we didn't have any money to do the sound mixing and the color grading, and they were the ones who helped. And thanks to those kind of festivals like you that keep going even in this pandemic to show movies from all around the world. I'm so humbled and happy that people in the US and New York and gonna get to see it again. Thank you so much, Tyler.
Well, we wouldn't be here without you, so I'm going to return that thanks one more time. And yes, good luck with the remaining life for this film and on your next projects. It's great to meet you and talking with you.
Thank you so much, Tyler, and have a great afternoon or good day over there. Bye.
Thanks for everyone for joining us.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.